Okay, welcome everybody to the Tuesday, October 10th BBC meeting. We've got three main topics tonight. Usually the first one is approve the last meeting minutes, but we will pause that agenda item until we get two more of our members on. We do have a quorum for the first agenda item, main of the three, is the Emery Grover. So with that, I will pass it over to you, Ken, correct, for an update. And
Yes, sir.
we do have voting items tonight, but we have a quorum for this agenda item.
All right, let's see. Where are we going here? This one. Okay. Before we get to the proverbial elephant in the room, little update on what's going on. Actually, let me share the pictures.
Can you let George in, Catherine? It looks like he is on the attendees
Oh,
side.
is he in the
Yeah, participants.
attendees? Oh, okay. All right, I've promoted him to panelist, so he should be on.
All right.
Yep, perfect. Thank you.
Just runs through some of the progress pictures. This is the north stairwell going in. The landing is up to the stairs are in up to what I call floor 2.5, if you will. Once that's completed, they'll be able to then remove the south stair, whose components are on site also. All right, Wyatt. No, Wyatt. No, Jesus. This is this was the testing of the grout injection. You can see that little blue can. It's about the size of a 5-yard pail. They make it up in batches of that and pump it in on 2-foot lifts. And the idea is to go around the building in these 2-foot lifts. Here they're doing some of the grinding and pointing and helical ties for the exterior walls. Some more of the new beams going in with the, you can see the hanger joists, joist hangers rather. On the roof, they're putting in the soffit and the cornice. The white material is the soffit and the cornice. And they've started doing a little bit of the copper flashing also. They'll be doing the gutters next week. Some more of the steel framing. And that's it. Any questions on the, I'll flip back to the agenda here. They've got 2 beams, by my count, 2 beams left to put in for the structural steel. They've been working on the chimney brick repairs. Should move over to grouting those in the very near future. The south elevation for the exterior pointing is just about complete. They got to wash it down. I got to check on a couple of things to make sure they are in fact complete before they do that. As I said, the brick ties and grinding is started. Cornice and soffit replacement is started. The lower level slab is 50% complete. The roof plywood insulation is complete, and they put on the ice and water shield on the areas that are getting it. And you saw the pictures of the north stair insulation. That's about 50% complete. The ACL, we're still waiting on pricing on the sewer and drain work, drop beams, window revisions, door frame revisions, and deleting the storage room. The structural brickwork line, O'Connor is currently repricing the picture frame lintels for the chimneys for the HVAC penetrations. And then we have the exterior brick, which the pricing came down in the latest iteration to $768. Last month, it was about $850 approximately. before we started to attack the various pieces to it. And this does not include any shoring, although right now we've got our fingers crossed that there'll be very little shoring that may be required. And that number does not include the general conditions, which I've noted in a separate line item, which are about $45,000 a month. This carries for 2 months. And it looks like, based on the way they're going, we should be done by the end of November with the grouting and all. I have not fully vetted that $768,000 number, but it doesn't look too far off from my initial review. So questions on that piece?
Yeah, just on the structural brickwork, any sense? I know you don't have a number there, but what if you
Well,
had?
it was 50, and it's only going to come down from there.
Okay, all right. And then I would like to, depending on how others feel, but I do have some questions around the sort of look ahead. If we truly hit 768 plus the 90, so 850, approximately 858, that takes a big chunk of the contingency. Putting aside any natural catastrophes or real unknowns, where's our risk with the building? I mean, it seems that if we've taken everything out in the inside, structurally, you got beams going up, we've really hit the brick structurals. We're going to be framing out the inside, building the walls. It strikes me as possibly a couple of areas of risk. One is a design is poor when it starts to get put together and something needs to be changed because of that design. Second, now you physically see some of the walls and see some of the things and actually work through it. There might be some slight changes there, but can we just comment a little bit about what we see looking ahead? Because again, with half the contingency going down, there's very little room for anything huge. I mean, fortunately, there's no hardscape work to do, really. Maybe there's some paving a little bit, but from the finishing the inside, what could we be facing?
Well, as I noted earlier, the walls, we could run into some issues when we put up the walls. Hopefully we find those when we lay them out before they get constructed and then have to be ripped out and done again. Just the placement, it doesn't fit, it doesn't line up with a beam or a column or something like that. We've got the gypcrete floors. I think we'll end up having to replace some of the 3/4 inch planking because I'm sure some of it's going to come up with the remainder of the hardwood floors that have to be still taken off. We also could have issues with the leveling of that gypcrete floor because we're limited to, it's got to be so thick, but it can't be thicker than, I think it's 1.5 inches is what the engineer has said. And there may be some low spots. Once we get the steel and the floor ripped out, we'll be able to do some surveys and get a better idea of the elevation of that. And then there's the ductwork. Well, a lot of time went into the coordination drawings for the ductwork. Invariably, you run into, it's not going to fit. The ceiling's too low, or the joists are too low, or this beam's in a different location, what have you. But that invariably happens. It happened to us at Public Safety, and I'm sure we won't go unscathed here. But as you noted, the building's been completely torn apart. But like I said you earlier, Stuart, if you told me 4 months ago we'd be spending $750,000 to fix the outer brick walls 4 months ago, I would have said you're crazy.
Erwin, you got to hand up?
Yeah, sort of following up to what you just asked. Can you just summarize, if I read the spreadsheet correctly, do we have about 800,000 to 900,000 left?
Yeah, 866 or something like that. I think it is, Erwin.
And how many months till completion?
Well, if the 2-month projection is correct, then completion will be sometime in September. So we've got another 11 months.
So that's,
But it's the same amount of work. The timing is off because of the work we have to do in the exterior walls, but the rest of the work is all the same. So the contingency is still covering the original contract work or changes to the contract work. And we've kind of put aside any discretionary wants or needs until we get into the spring and have a better idea of where we stand exactly.
so that's, my calculations are correct. What is that? 70,000, 80,000 a month would be what?
I wouldn't go by that way.
No?
Erwin, I'd go to December, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September. So 9 to 10 months. So 80 to 90,000, 75 to 90,000 a month when we get back into the contract work.
And before we hit some of these big items, is that within the range that we had been experiencing, or
No,
we're doing
no,
less than that?
it's been much less than that, but we
Okay.
really haven't gotten into the meat of anything either. So a lot of the contingency's been spent on these unknowns that
Right.
we've uncovered. The chimneys, the exterior brick, the underlayment in the roof, the underlayment on the floor, things of that nature.
So it sounds like this sounds to me a little bit of concern, but not yet a real high concern. Is that
I'm not jumping off the scaffolding yet. No.
okay? I wouldn't want you to do that.
But
I'd
is,
be wearing a bungee cord. No worries.
yeah, is, the other thing, I don't know if where our confidence is at this stage of the design documents relative to anything that could be missing. We had to do it in the public safety, where we went through and ironed out where we thought maybe some of the bid missed some pieces from the design. I think I'm oversimplifying that, but do we need to re-review design from a standpoint of making sure that we don't get any surprises because it wasn't noted on the documents?
I'm not sure exactly what percentage of the contract O'Connor has bid out, but they have bid out a fair amount of it. And what was uncovered previously was subs that they've already bid out. Obviously, the file sub bids are a bid out. And we haven't had too much, knock on wood, of input or response from the file sub bids and the other subcontractors that they feel that there's something missing. There's been little things here and there, but nothing crazy. So keep my fingers crossed that will continue as we start getting into this other stuff. But some of it you just don't know till you put it in.
I know, but it's just what can we do to help eliminate what's in our power and our professional level of insight to be able to do that.
Well, it's to catch it before it's installed, Stuart. So a lot of that is in the layout. So
Yeah.
a lot of this stuff we'll catch before it happens.
Right.
So that we don't install something that doesn't really work.
Right. Right.
Doesn't
Thank
work 100%, but yeah.
Thank you. Hand up.
Yeah, and BH plus A is reviewing the furniture drawings, for instance, and adjusting locations of outlets. Went through another review with that today based upon the latest furniture. But other pressure in terms of the cost of furniture that we most recently have is higher than our budget. By about 100,000. So we either need to cut back on that or delay some of that ordering until we have a better handle on the contingency. And I don't think we've been extravagant in the furniture. and what is spec'd out. But the movable partition, or the movable storage units in the basement, for instance, have just been priced, and they would be part of that package. And I don't think they were carried in the prior furniture budget.
Is there, so if you think about that, you delay part of the ordering on the furniture, and then if everything works out, you can dip into the contingency. Is there any other value engineering or any other things that we know that could be, not to value engineer now to move it out per se, but are there some things that we know that if we start to have to squeeze, we could give up on the later stages of the building? I don't know, maybe it is a partition, maybe it's something else. Don't have to answer exactly now, but
No,
I'm just,
Hank and I did review that, Stuart. We went through
Okay.
the various line items. So there is some bits and bits. It's not a huge amount of money, but there are some things in IT, AV, possibly security, a few other inspection. You know, we're pretty much done with, you know, we got some inspections left, but I think we got enough money in that line item. We got some money in the commissioning line item. So there are some things, but it's not huge dollars at this point.
so I would just ask that I see George's hand up, but hold on a second. I would just ask as a project team that we just start becoming aware of what things we might be able to manage downstream if we really start to hit some.
Right. And we have started that process already.
Okay, thanks. George, you have your hand up, but you're on mute. Give George a second to get off mute. George, you're still on mute. Is there a way we can take him off mute?
Um,
There he's off
Hello?
mute. Yeah, I can hear you, George.
Okay, one of the questions I have is the storage units in the basement. Why, I know they're added because we think they're necessary now, but why wouldn't those be put on a list of, these are the things that we may add later if we have enough money in contingency?
We've discussed that, George. We've asked the design team to look with Red Thread, the furniture designer, to look at things that we can do in that line and maybe split it into multiple orders. Bid out the install of some stuff as opposed to just using Red Thread's installer. So they are looking at various avenues along those lines.
Is that equipment critical to the startup of the building?
No,
I don't think so.
no, it's not. It's
So-
not.
So we ought to just put it on hold. And
The only question is, does it affect the pricing of the order? In other words, if you pull something out of that order, are we going to be paying, 5%, 10%, 25% more if we order it down the line? That may tweak our thinking,
Why-
but we've got to get
why
those.
would that be the case? Why would that be the case? You just place another order.
Well,
Well, the
cost-
bulk ordering could be less expensive.
But also prices are not going down. We would have to factor escalation into the delay.
Well, all right.
But
I think we ought to be looking at,
we're looking into it. We'll see what the savings would be, to see what the cost would be, and then we can make a more intelligent decision when we have those numbers.
all right. The other question I had related to the schedule. If you decrease the schedule, if you find a way to make up time in the schedule, then you're going to pay less in general conditions. Correct?
Correct, but what we're finding is many of the items that need to be done cannot be done concurrently with the brickwork, the windows, for instance. We cannot install the windows till the brickwork is complete because they're power washing, cutting, grinding, drilling, grouting.
And were those scheduled to be done now?
Yes, the windows are in.
In other words, have we
Not
pushed
in the
all that out?
building, but the windows are in the supplier's yard.
I understand that. I'm assuming they would be at this point, but my point is, were they expected to be installed now so that we're
Yes.
actually
Yes,
delaying them?
they were expected to be installed by the 1st of November.
Okay,
So this
So-
brickwork is delaying that enclosure. And they're moving forward as rapidly as they can, but it's a real mess while they're doing that work on the inside.
understand. Okay, so this truly does stretch out the schedule, and the contractor, have we asked the contractor to go back and see what they can do to decrease the schedule?
It already went from 4 months to 2 months.
Well, I would be happy until it went to zero, but that's the best they can do, is what you're saying.
Well, what we're gonna reevaluate it as we see how the actual grouting work goes. They may be able to squeeze that down a little more. And if they can, well, a week, 2 weeks, whatever it may be, well, whatever we can save, we'll go that route. In the meantime, they're putting the roof on. They'll be getting ready to take off the dormer end, the north end of the roof, for the mechanical room. So there are things they can do concurrently, but most of those are not on the critical path.
And George,
Right,
the other thing, we
what-
we asked them if they could do 2 lifts on the injection grouting in a day, but the grout needs time to settle and harden. We're asking the structural engineer that question again, to see whether there's a way in which they could do 2 lifts instead of just 1 lift a day.
Okay, I guess when you think the timing is right, I would go back to the contractor and ask him to really study this hard and see if there's a way to bring the schedule back to what it was. Understanding that he's added a lot of work, whether it means adding more people, whether it means adding more hours, potentially paying him overtime.
You can
Once
do
we
that.
get this problems.
You can do that, certainly, but is that cheaper or more expensive than the $45,000 a month?
Well, that's a good question.
Once you get
I
into
don't know the answer.
overtime,
That's up to him to tell me that.
some of these trades are not just time and a half overtime, they're double time. And some of the
Okay,
trades also, if there's anybody on site that's making double time, they make double time, even though
I understand all that. What I'm suggesting is not to tell him how to do that, but to ask him to look at ways of decreasing the
we've done,
schedule.
George, we've been doing that since this whole issue cropped up.
Okay.
It's a constant discussion. And like I said, once we get to a better feel for how the grout is going and the timing on completing the grout, we can do a much more thorough breakdown of all that. But until we know when the
Okay.
grout is going to be actually done, we can't plan anything because we
Well,
can't move forward.
that's all I'm asking. That's all I'm asking, is that look-see be done on a regular basis.
It has,
Once you know
it
what's
has been
going
for the
on.
past 3 months and will continue
Okay.
to be on that way.
Okay, I didn't know that, and it wasn't mentioned, so I thought I would ask it.
Okay. All right, so Richard, sorry, George, you all set?
I'm all set.
Okay, thank you. Richard?
Yeah, just a quick clarification, Ken, and what is the outer limit for enclosing the building for the winter such that interior work can proceed at the in order to get to proceed as close to schedule as possible? What is that outer limit, given the fact that you've got the brickwork now, which is delaying the windows, et cetera?
I can't, tell me what the weather's gonna be like, the middle to end of November, and I'll let you know, but
Yeah.
Certainly when the time comes to do the floors, the Gypcrete floors, would be the first thing that would be done that would require heat, assuming
Mhm.
the grouting gets done before we get really cold weather, which as we went through it today, it looks like it probably will, but you get an early cold snap. I mean, 1 or 2 days, if we can't do it for 1 or 2 days, that's not going to kill us.
Right.
But if we get sustained colder weather,
Right.
that's
But maybe
where we-
maybe the way to phrase it is, in your experience, what have you seen is kind of like the tipping point, that place where you're kind of
Well, it
pointing.
depends. It depends on what you're doing on the inside. I mean, I've gone through whole winters without temporary heat because we're not doing anything that requires it.
Yeah.
Here, we'll require it once the floors, and the floors will be, I don't know, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe after the grouting's done.
Okay,
Maybe more than that because they'll do the windows first.
right.
So
Okay,
And they want to get the windows in to tighten up the envelope. If they need to, they'll put temporary enclosures.
Yep.
And then in openings that would otherwise require them to wait. But they want to get those windows in as soon as possible. I think their anticipation is they'll be complete with the interior work on the brick prior to Thanksgiving.
okay. Great, thank you both.
Okay, great. Is there anything else on this before we go to invoices? Okay, I would just sum up and just ask that, obviously, given what the questions have been raised, is that we are looking and maybe not this meeting, but the next one that we talk about in McGrover, I think we're gonna have to come back to some of these topics. And just make sure that we do have an appreciation for what things we do think could be more held off if we get into a pinch, and then also you'll probably have some better numbers on some of those other items in the ACL log too, correct?
yes.
Hank?
Yeah, and we have alerted the superintendent, and is also party to this current discussion, that moving in over the summer of 2024 is unlikely. And also in discussions with the IT folks, who you may know have taken over the responsibility for a lot of the town IT, that doing their fit out work after school opens might be easier for them. And fortunately, Hillside is functioning fine, so a phased move-in may be the solution. And that,
To the point of the superintendent, I don't know, Ann or Michael, do I need to give him a call? Or are you bringing him up to speed post this conversation?
Dan is aware of most of what we've discussed already.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I can catch up with him if needed. Okay. Again, so any other questions, comments? Okay, I think we should go to the voting items.
Yeah.
The change order first.
Sure.
And then we will go to the invoice, the PSS, then the invoices, correct?
The
Okay.
3 items in the change order this month are the MEP those shear walls that were added. This is $34,000 for relocating MEP. They couldn't go the way it was supposed to go because the shear walls are in the way. The structural chimney work, this was identified as $115,000. It came out as $113,770.64. And the plumbing inspector had 2 items. One was a full height vent, 4-inch vent from the basement up, and the other was a outlet on the sump pump. So that was $11,476.08.
And do you agree with those requests? They're reasonable?
They're the code.
Sure. Okay. Great. Just want to make sure, because I mean, it's, inspections, you have to do it, but I just want to make sure it's aligned.
Yeah, there's
Thanks.
sometimes they ask for something that isn't necessarily in the code, but usually if it's not a big dollar number, to keep harmony, you know,
Sure.
you go ahead and do it.
Sure.
We had a couple of those on public safety.
Sure, okay. All right, with that said, I'm gonna put forth for approval the change order number 7 for a total of $159,658.57 coming out of the GC budget. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you. And with that, we do have a roll call. Okay. Any questions before I go to? Hearing none, seeing none. Okay, roll call. Richard,
Aye.
Erwin,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Lynn, you're on mute, Lynn.
I thought you said Anne, sorry.
Thanks. No, I will go to Michael now.
Aye.
And Anne.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, great. All right, with that, we're gonna go to the PSS number 10. I'll put forth for approval for BH&A unforeseen structural items, post occupancy verification, total of $140,889.54 coming out of the architectural budget. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you, Michael. Any questions? Hearing none, seeing none, coming to the roll call. Richard,
Aye.
Erwin,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Lynn,
I
Michael,
Aye.
Anne.
Aye.
The chair is aye, and also Catherine, the chair is aye for the previous item. Apologize
Okay, thank you.
being out of order. Okay, with that said, we're now going to go to the invoices. We have 4. I'll group 2 of them together, but the first one will stand on its own. Put forth invoice number 10 from O'Connor Contracting. So this is Rec 10 through September 2023 for $1,121,694.10 coming out of the general contracting budget. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions? And coming to the roll call. Richard,
Aye.
Erwin,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Lynn, Michael,
Aye.
Anne,
Aye.
the chair is aye. I'm going to group 2 invoices together, put forth for approval from BH&A, both coming out of the architectural budget. First one is BH&A for August 2023 Emery Grover, general, $17,258.79. Second one is BH&A for August 2023 for FF&E on Emery Grover, $12,500. Total of $29,758.79. Put forth for approval. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you,
Second.
Erwin. Any questions? Hearing none, seeing none, coming to the roll call. Richard,
Aye.
Erwin,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Lynn,
I
Michael,
Aye.
Anne,
Aye.
and the chair is aye. Last invoice for this project in this agenda item is a invoice for RG Vanderweld Engineers, July 2023 commissioning for $1,552 coming out of the miscellaneous budget. I'll put that invoice forth for approval. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any questions? Hearing none, seeing none, coming to the roll call. Richard,
Aye.
Erwin,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Lynn,
Michael,
Aye.
Anne,
Aye.
you, and the chair is aye. And that is it for invoices. Are we all reconciled, Catherine and Ken?
Yes, I believe
I
so.
believe so, yes.
Excellent. Okay. With that, unless there's any other questions, concerns, I will suggest we close down this agenda item. Thank you, Anne and Michael. I know we've got the next one, the R2 replacement. If I may ask the committee's support here is, can we just quickly flip back to the approve the minutes We now have a full quorum for that, the committee itself. I'd like to put forth I'd like to propose approving the minutes from the previous meeting. And if I could seek a second.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions, concerns relative to the previous meeting's minutes? Hearing none, seeing none, coming to the roll call. Richard,
Aye.
Erwin,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Lynn,
Aye.
and the chair is aye. Thank you. All right, we will swing back to the agenda topics. The next one is the RTU replacement for Elliott. And is Barry with us? Barry is not.
It's not. I will talk to that one.
Okay.
We mainly have the PSS and the invoices to approve. We are progressing with GGD on the review of all the submittals. Enterprise Equipment Company is submitting basically the basis of design equipment, and so is making it quite easy for the approval. We are getting comments back from the commissioning agent, typically within 24 hours, if not the same day. And the review by GGD is equally as quick, given that it's the basis of design and is in essence what they were asking for. There have been a few questions that have come up, and we're going through resolving those issues. But all of the long lead items have now been approved. The order time, we're told, is around 40 weeks. So that larger equipment, the rooftop units and the air handling, air source heat pumps, those are already on order. We'd expect at the November meeting to get the first invoice from that contractor to cover bonds and insurance. And also at that time, we would anticipate having their anticipated schedule. We are working with them to identify some items that could be completed during the April break when the school is out of session, just to get a head start on some of the work in the mechanical room, and also some work above the roof, and perhaps some structural work over the cafetorium space, so that when the units arrive on site, they're also beginning to look at the PIC plan for removing the existing rooftop units and then placing the new ones. There will be some curb work that has to be done, but we all know that it's a tight 8-week schedule, and they're optimistic that all the equipment will come in on time, and they'll be able to fully finish it. Some of the commissioning may drag into the school year, but that is yet to be seen. We'll also have their full schedule of values that you'll be able to see during the first meeting in November. So I'm optimistic that this one will proceed according to plan. And meanwhile, GGD is beginning to do the design work for the Broad Meadow. They've placed some sound recording machines around the perimeter of the property to ascertain what, if any, acoustical shielding needs to be done for the new equipment, and things like that. The one thing that has changed is Matt DeSalvo, who was the engineer, project engineer, is moving on to a different firm. We've been in contact with the new team. They've come out to visit the site, and there's some familiar names who've been party to prior all of the work leading up to this, and also familiar names that we've worked with on other projects. So at that meeting in November, I'll introduce other members of the team who will be stepping in for Matt as he moves on to his other place of employment. And are there any questions about progress or?
Just quickly refresh the dates again. So June through July, right?
Yes, the anticipation is that they would start the day after school ends, which typically is
15th, 20th.
around middle of June, depending on how many snow days there are. And then they would be done a week prior. Their scheduled time is a week prior to the school opening. They need to have substantial completion. And that means the units operating. As you may recall, the cooling is sometimes needed at the beginning of the school year. And so the anticipation is that those machines would be operating by that time. There have been sufficient breakdowns in the current equipment in prior years that hasn't always been the case, but they've had workarounds. I anticipate or hope we won't have those same workarounds, particularly since we did that value engineering exercise and dealt with the additional structural steel above the roof as opposed to below the roof, which was, I guess, when we were in DD on the project.
I have a question.
George?
Unless my math is incorrect, you said approximately 40 weeks of delivery. Does that mean they won't get there till next August?
No, that was the beginning of the order of the review process. So they are anticipating that the equipment will arrive in by mid-June. And they're looking into ways to expedite that if possible.
All right.
In our Broadmeadow schedule, we are looking to try to have the bid documents available in May of 2024 so that the contractor would have a full year to do all of the submittal review process and ordering, to give them a bit more time. We have heard that the supply chain issues that were problematic previously are lessening. They haven't gone away completely, but they are less of a factor at this point.
Any other questions before we go to voting items? Okay, you okay with that, Hank? Go to voting items?
Please.
Okay. All right, with that said, there are 3 items to vote on tonight for the RTU replacement project. The first one is a PSS number 1 for NV5. So that's construction through warranty commissioning, $57,600 from the miscellaneous budget I put forth for approval. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions? Hearing none, coming to the roll call. Richard?
Aye.
Erwin?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Lynn?
Aye.
Ann?
Aye.
Okay, and chair is aye. Have an invoice for GGD Consulting Engineers for August 2023 services, $14,100 coming out of the designer budget. Put forth for approval. Do I hear a second?
Second,
Second,
Thank you, Erwin. Any questions? Hearing none, seeing none, come to the roll call. Richard,
Aye.
Erwin,
aye,
George,
aye,
Lynn,
Aye.
Ann,
Aye.
the chair is aye. The last invoice is for NV5 for August and September 2023 commissioning for $1,232.70. Coming out of the miscellaneous budget. Do I hear a second for approval?
second,
Thank you, George. Any questions? Hearing none, seeing none, come to the roll call. Richard,
Aye.
Erwin,
aye,
George,
aye,
Lynn,
Aye.
Ann,
Aye.
and the chair is aye. And with that, that was the last voting item. Is that all reconciled, Catherine? And
Yep.
Yes.
okay, great. All right, with that, I'll close down that agenda item. We'll now move to the next final major project topic tonight, which is the DPW feasibility study. And I presume, and Shane's here. Do we turn that to you, Hank?
Yes, and I did distribute to you the link to the draft final report, which had the full text, but I also sent out PDFs of the executive summary and then the refinement of option 4, as well as the preliminary cost estimate for that. And and I was going to pull them up, but let me see where they are.
Hopefully everybody had a look. I looked at them. I think the only thing that I found interesting was the option on the the RTS site, both the Jack Cogswell, which we talked about before, but then it looked like a potential option of a building on the front little island, rearranging a bit near the salt shed.
That was in let me try to get those up. I'm sorry. I thought I had them in here.
While you're doing that, just the only other question is, what does the committee need to do tonight other than just acknowledge those?
I think basically acknowledge it.
What do you need, Hank? Can I find something?
Yeah, I'm looking for that latest plan set. I had
The plan set of the study.
Appendix N.
I've got the draft final report here, Hank, if you want me to put it up there.
Yeah, if you could open it up to
Appendix N.
N.
Yeah, hang on.
Shane, you get your hand up.
Here we go.
Got
Hank,
it?
I've got appendix in here too, if you want me to share it.
Yeah, I just found it. Hold on. There we go.
Okay.
There we go. Sorry about that. Let's see. Can you all see that?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, so the adjustments that we went through with this were to place the wash bay up above on the upper zone of the site at 470, near to the 6-bay garage. Because in this option, the 6-bay garage is being retained and it's being converted into shops for the 3 divisions that will be located here. There'll be additional shop storage added, and the wash bay could potentially be done as a standalone first piece if the vehicles pull in and then pull back. The employee facility area here would need to be 2 stories in order to accommodate the square footage, but it would have a window here so that during snow events or other emergency events, the trucks could pull in and report in and then exit out through DeFazio parking lot. And then just to the, I guess this is technically to the east, there would be some employee parking here, some employee parking here, and some down here. This upper area would actually be phase 2 in the construction. The first phase would be done over at the Jack Cogswell building, which would relocate the mechanic bays over to the Jack Cogswell site. This phase 2 could be constructed while the existing facility remains, so that storage of the vehicles could remain in the existing facility while this is being constructed up here. The new fleet storage, which would be phase 3, is situated about 55 feet back from the culvert at Alderbrook, which would enable the installation of a retention pond for taking all of the water coming off of the asphalt and off the roof, and still allow for a canopy storage to be constructed along that edge and a drive-by lane. This access point wouldn't be constructed until this 3rd phase, and access to the rear could be maintained by this crossing here, so that both this crossing and this crossing would be all part of phase 3. One complication we need to sort out with the school department is that in order to get a drive around, we would have to cross over this diagonal line, which is the differentiation between select board and school committee control, but it's a minor incursion, if you will, into that area. Before I jump over to Jack Cogswell, are there any questions about this site?
No, see or hear anything. Thank you.
Over at Jack Cogswell, the phase one would be the addition of these 5 mechanics bays. It would require additional blasting. It would require a retaining wall cut into the hillside here. But part of the reason, as I think we discussed last time, the coming and going of these workers tends to be in the morning and then they leave in the evening. There's not a lot of truck traffic coming and going during the day. So the added traffic to Central Avenue would be relatively minimal. And also, as pointed out in the executive summary, some of the vehicles over at the RTS are the ones that need the most frequent repair. And so proximity would be advantageous from an operations perspective. You had asked about these other, well, it's actually in a later phase. In the final phase, they're looking at, zoom down to that. This is the detail, which you pretty much saw all that layout in the final presentation last time. Any other questions about this edition?
I don't see any hands up or here.
And then daily building would be concurrent with the phase 3, the fleet storage building over at DPW. This shows a renovation of the facility. So temporary relocation over to Hillside would be required, but it also shows a canopy constructed along this edge for the storage of or covering of some of the vehicles for building maintenance, maintaining the same access off of the fire station, and in the budget would also be a connection for the sewer coming up to Webster Street, Webster Ave. And this was what you had asked about.
Yeah.
Currently, the employees have a dilapidated trailer. They are replacing that probably within the next year with a leased trailer, going through those negotiations now, but it's inadequate for all the other support facilities that are necessary to maintain the RTS in its current operation. As you may know, the town is also going through an analysis for curbside pickup, and pending that, which I think is in process, Shane, I don't know what the deadline is for that.
I believe the end of this year, Hank.
These improvements would be the last phase of the DPW improvements, and could potentially be phased as well, but these are options. So one option here, another option over here, a third option over in this far edge here. And then canopy storage would be adding cover for their vehicles, which currently either get parked in this maintenance building or underneath the tipping floor building. Not a great place to store your vehicles. And question as to what will eventually happen to the red brick building here. That would either be torn down and parking would be added at that location, or it would be converted to a facility for people going to the trail or other general use. Any other questions about this option?
Don't see any nor hear any, so, okay.
I did have one question.
Go ahead,
It may not
George.
be to that option, but this may sound far afield, but I don't think it is. I think it's related. The current activity associated with the solar on the roof of the Cogswell building, how does that interface if we were to build new structures there in the future? Would be any interference or?
If we can overcome the hurdle that the DPU has for having multiple solar facilities on a single site, I think that we would be able to add to what would be on top of the Jack Cogswell building. But it may be that we just delay that installation until this addition occurs. But it's a administrative holdup at this point. They are going through.
What's the DPW's issue?
The,
DPU's issue? DPU's
they-
issue, sorry.
there's a former rule that restricted the construction of two separate solar facilities on a single site. That was changed at the by legislative action in 2022 and was signed into law by Charlie Baker before he left office. The DPU is going through now their administrative public hearing process and claim that they can't approve anything because it would not have been allowed under the old rules, but they have to go through the public hearing process before they can institute the new rules. And town council has been prodding them. And I know that the town manager has had discussions with some of our representatives on this issue, but it seems to be in stalemate and has been so for the last year.
Talk about rigmarole and government red tape getting in the way of progress. This is a classic example of that. This is horrible. I don't have to, you don't have to comment, Hank. I just think it's terrible that the DPU can't get their act together here.
I guess they need to hear from the utilities and the public before they can change their rules, but that's the status of that one.
Okay. Any other questions or?
I should, if I can now find that other preferred option, the phasing and the cost associated with the phases. I will share my screen again. And what this approach allows for is, I'll call it bite-sized chunks, where we'd have to look at the total project costs with the various soft costs. And some of these numbers are being baked into the capital improvement plans. But the anticipation would be that there'd be design funding approved in 2024 for the first phase, followed by construction funding in 2025 for the Jack Cogswell building. And so that would be, because of the scale of this, it would be coming back to the PVVC. And then phase 2, which would be the upper 470, design funding would be forthcoming in 2026, with construction funding to do the construction in 2027. So all of these funding sequences would have to be the half a year ahead, so in the fiscal year. Then before getting into phase 3, which has 2 components, there'd be a brief hiatus in 28 and 29, and projections going out that far are unknown. But if they do get delayed yet further, then cost escalation would need to be added accordingly. And also the Daily building could be done independently from the phase 3 fleet storage building if that was deemed appropriate in the future. All of these buildings are being designed to be solar ready, but if we are looking to put geothermal or other improvements like that, there would likely be a premium to these numbers, and that's noted in the bottom column here, or bottom row.
So if you add this up, Hank, basically 30, 55, 63, 76, 77 million.
Yeah.
Roughly.
Order of magnitude, yes.
But in bite-sized chunks.
Yes, and that is what was different from the 2026 study, where we were trying to cram everything onto one site and do it all at once. And I think that this was a product, if you will, a learning process from COVID, during COVID, that the functions could exist at different sites and still operate effectively. And hence breaking the pieces up so that Cogswell has one piece. 470 still has the lion's share of the DPW facilities. And then RTS, of course, would be maintained. I should note that there are ongoing discussions, I think it was noted in the prior meeting, with adjoining towns to see if there's any opportunities to do joint wash bay or facilities like that. But they're only discussions at this point. The hope would be that if there was some agreement with another town, that the costs would be shared, and if it were on a site, or if it might be eligible for some portion of state funding as a joint facility. And those types of facilities are quite common in Western Massachusetts, less common in Eastern Massachusetts.
Okay.
Shane, do you want to add anything?
No, sir, you covered it.
Okay, so with that, Hank, I don't believe there's any voting item on the study. That's the informative piece. We don't have any specific voting items for this project.
I would suggest that if anyone has any edits, I am going through and picking up typos, but if anybody has any specific comments, please email them to me this week so I can feed them back to the design team. And then they'll finalize their report prior to the end of the month.
Great, Hank. Thanks. With that, I will close this agenda item down And now we'll go to PVC other businesses. There is three pieces. One, which is we have other invoices to approve. So if I ask the committee, we could move forward through three projects: the library space study, the public safety, and the school master. We have a couple invoices on those. And I'll start with the library space utilization study. We have one invoice there. Put forth the invoice for Utile for August 2023 services for $15,775 coming out of the architectural budget for the library space utilization study. Seek approval for that invoice. Do I hear a second?
Second,
Thank you, George. Any questions? Seeing none, coming to the roll call. Richard,
Aye.
Erwin,
Aye.
George,
aye,
Aye.
Lynn, and the chair is aye. The next one is the public safety. We have three invoices. I'm going to group together. They're all coming out of the technology budget. I'll put forth these three invoices for approval. The first one is New Era Technology Security System Integration, $4,900.84. Second piece is New Era Technology for interview room video and audio recording for $2,685.58. And the third of the three is New Era Technology, again, booking and holding area audio recording for $16,900. The total is $24,486.42 coming out of the technology budget. Do I hear a second?
Second.
second,
Thank you, Lynn. Any questions? Hearing none, seeing none, coming to the roll call. Richard,
Aye.
Erwin,
Aye.
George,
aye,
Lynn,
Aye.
and the chair is aye. The last invoice is the school master plan. It's an invoice I put forth for approval for Doran Whittier for September 2023 services for $4,200 coming out of the architectural budget. Do I hear a second?
second,
You. Any questions? Hearing none, seeing none, coming to the roll call. Richard,
Aye.
Erwin,
Aye.
George,
aye,
Lynn,
Aye.
the chair is aye. Okay, thank you. That is all the invoices. Are you all set, Catherine, Hank? Any?
Yes, for invoices.
Great, thank you. All right. Now, the second of the three pieces in the other businesses, in-person meetings through the end of the year. Just wanted to confirm with everybody, Catherine and I had a short discussion at the beginning of this before we went to recording, is that, and actually we communicated earlier today, based on the projects and based on what we're doing, I don't think we need any in-person meetings. It would be good if we could have one in-person meeting before the end of the year, but only if there's enough of a topic that we need to work through. So I would just put that on the table if there's any discussion, any input from anybody. And then the part B of that is next meeting, I think we will do in maybe canceled based on what we've got. But if we do hold it, it'll be Zoom. But back to the first part of the topic, which is the more pertinent piece, which is any input from the committee relative to in-person meetings through the end of the year. And the reason for this is that it's helping Catherine manage the library slots that we have reserved.
Sounds fine to me.
Same.
Any other concerns, objections, George?
no. I think we, all of our projects, I think the decision-making that we've done, we're kind of behind that now, and it's a matter of executing. And we can do that very nicely, I think, with this format.
Okay. Great. All right, Richard, any objections, any
No,
additional?
I think that makes sense. I guess the only question I would have is the annual election of officers. Is that more appropriately done in person, or can we do it by Zoom? I don't think there's any reason to meet in person, but maybe it's, if people feel more comfortable doing it in person, maybe that's something we should consider. That last meeting in December, I believe it is.
Any thoughts from anybody on that? I think we can also come back to that in the next two meetings. Firm that up. Because the last topic I would like to discuss tonight, put on the table, is the chair and vice chair elections. We do need to address that. I think in particular the vice chair spot. And I'd like to have a discussion and put that on the table. But before I do that, relative to the in-person, any other input to the in-person meetings? I think what we'll do is with Richard's comment, I think we keep that as an open discussion next meeting or the meeting after, and determine whether we do an in-person, particularly as it relates to the vote. Okay. I would like a little discussion amongst the committee that's here. We do need to get a vice chair. Richard is in position for the chair. He's vice chair now. And we really need to nominate somebody for the vice chair. I don't think we have to vote for it tonight or propose tonight. Ultimately, it does come down to the end of the year when we do vote. But I would like to get that discussion on the table tonight relative to a vice chair and how we're going to do this.
I think it's clearly concerning that we have people that are struggling to make that commitment. And so to me, the challenge is either adding, there are people not on the call and they may be interested or not. And then do we have the right mix of people on this committee going forward that can commit to that long-term conversation? Because that's the thing I struggle with the most, which is, can I commit to 2, 3, 4 years moving forward? Because I had not planned on doing that. And I think that based on my experience so far with the committee, that's what it feels like. And that's what I struggle with. And perhaps other people do too, but I can't speak for others, but.
I thought that we would, one thing that was important as we started to rotate the chair and the vice chair is that we looked more as shorter term versus longer term positions to get that rotation moving. So is this more because people feel they have to be on the chair for 3 years, 4 years? Or do we actually have a better chance for commitment if it's not as long? I feel that people have been, there's a few people that haven't been making as many meetings, but most of us have been meeting, most of us have been able to attend the meetings. So I don't know if the chair or vice chair role changes any level of commitment per se, if it's more in the short term, 1 to 2 years. That makes sense.
I guess I look at it as, if you look at it from a minimum point of view, it's kind of a 2-year commitment. 1 year as vice chair and 1 year as chair. So I don't think there'd be any more of a commitment than that. So in Lynn's case, for example, if you could see your way clear to committing for 2 years, then you could be vice chair for next year, chair for the following year, and then you could move off the board if you wanted to, or up again for another term or whatever. And that way your commitment really is only for 2 years, plus what you've already participated in.
Correct. But again, not to be the fly in the ointment,
That's
not
the
to be the
hard part
fly,
for you.
not to be the fly in the ointment, but I personally signed up for 3 years. And so what you're considering is another 2. And we're also not necessarily considering the fact that Richard's been waiting to take on the chair role, which So now we're going down the path of, Richard, you're in, you're out.
Right,
So
one of the
I
difficult.
feel like all of those things need to be sort of talked through to understand like what Richard's commitment is and what he's expecting for himself and the vice chair, because it would appear to me that everybody else has been given that opportunity to sort of create their path. And I think all that needs to be sort of teased out before we decide what that commitment looks like. Because if Richard said he'd like to do it for 2 or 3 years, then it really means the vice chair is committing to 3+.
3 years. Right,
Or-
but the vice chair doesn't have to, if, for example, the chair decides he wants to serve and it's best for the committee to serve for another couple of years, the vice chair could always rotate off and get another vice chair. So I
Agreed.
don't think the commitment is absolute that the
Okay,
vice
well,
chair
that's a
has to
fair,
become the
that's a
chair.
fair comment. Has anyone talked to Jean or others?
Roy, no,
Roy? Because I feel like every time we have this conversation, they're not on the call. So it might be an interesting conversation. And I appreciate what you're saying, George, because the reality is in the last conversation we had conversations about people that said they may not be on the committee a year or 2 from now, or may not be living in Needham a year or 2 from now. And that also is impactful because that means that new people would be rotating in the next year or 2 that may have different perspectives.
Right. I think generally speaking, if you're appointed for a term of 3 years, I think a person should not be asked to serve as chair or vice chair the first year they're there, of course. I think there needs to be a kind of a 1-year period of acclimation and getting used to how we operate and what the principles of the committee are. And then the second year could be a vice chair, depending on the involvement of the person. So you could have someone come in, be a member of the committee for a year, and then a member of the committee for a vice chair for a year and a chair for a year, and complete their 3-year commitment and be chair and vice chair. That's perfectly reasonable, because no one that comes on this committee is without experience, substantial experience, regardless of what their background is. That we almost always try to find someone with the right kind of experience, so that people aren't really rookies from that perspective, for sure. They always bring a lot more to the plate. Anyway, that's my thought. I think we do have to push on the couple of committee members that do not have the best of attendance, and make sure we get the commitment out of them, that because that essentially takes them off the list of people that I would think could do the chair, vice chair, because if they can't make a commitment to be here for most of the meetings, then it seems like that's not a good thing to have for chair and vice chair, but that's my opinion.
I think I said this before. I don't know if Lynn was alluding to this, but I'm just not sure about the next year or so for me on this committee. So I wouldn't.
Right.
If I
And
was
that's
going-
fair.
If I was going to want to be vice chair, that means I would not do that unless I was for sure going to be on the committee at least 2 more years. And there are too many things in flux right now, and I cannot make that commitment right now.
And Erwin, how many years have you been on the committee?
104.
It only feels that way to you.
2 less than
Feels like
George. 2 less than George.
No, we have to go in tandem, Erwin. Come on now.
I'll have a talk with you about that.
Anyway,
I would still be a proponent of identifying potential new members because I think there's a lot of
question, yeah.
conversation around this, right? So A, we need new members. B, we need members that are going to show up. C, we need members that are going to commit to at least 3 years and get into a rotation system that is
Right.
functioning, right? Because I think it feels like, again, I've only been here 2 years, but it feels like this is new conversation about how to sort of transition this, like on a regular basis. And it's going to be a little bumpy in the beginning. And I think it's especially bumpy because it looks like we have people who've been engaged for a long time and people who've been engaged for a short time. And those two things are not gelling well when we think about succession planning, right? Those two things don't jive. So it feels
the
like
first
we
one
need to
doesn't-
look at the composition of the team, of the group, and decide how that composition might need to be thought about a little differently in order to get into the fashion of succession, moving it every 2 years or 1 year or whatever it is, without Richard being the one that gets sort of like squeezed in the middle.
Right. The first few chairs never really set the model for the rest for going forward. I think the first chair was there for quite a few years, 4 years maybe. Then John Connolly was chair for a number of years. And then I was chair for a number of years. And now when I stepped down, Stuart has moved into that role of being chair for a few years. So maybe we're getting there slowly and in steps, but I do think we ought to still try to have people come on the committee that can be part of that rotation. Right now, we're down to 5 people that can do that, and of course, it's natural that some people, like Erwin, has not made a decision about what's going to happen over the next couple of years, or you haven't, and I think it's something that we need to have a little more activity so that we have more of a choice of people that could potentially serve. So I think the eventual model should be come onto the committee for a year, and if appropriate, be a vice chair for a year. And then even if you have to step down as vice chair, you could bring someone else in as vice chair, but potentially have that vice chair serve as chair. The select board does that very nicely. Now that's a different board, but they do it very nicely. Basically, when you come onto the select board, you have an obligation to rotate into that role. And almost everybody on the board now, well, no, I guess there's a couple more, but they used to become chair. They're on the committee for a few years, a couple of years, and then they become vice chair, and then they step down, and they could still stay on the select board if they get reelected. But it's a really well-defined rotation. And no one is a chair on the select board for more than a year at a time. So that gives you the nice rotation. But people make that commitment when they come on the board. On ours, no one makes the commitment of becoming a chair or vice chair, potentially. And I think everybody that comes on the committee, I think, needs to make that commitment, but during the first period of 3 years of being appointed. I think that's a reasonable request too, because you're not making a commitment for more than 3 years. And in that 3-year period, you could be selected as vice chair and eventually chair. So.
School committee operated the same way. You had 7 members, and it was understood that, assuming you got reelected, that you would eventually become vice chair and chair.
School committee? Right.
Yeah, it was a 1-year commitment, and it was understood that there was a succession, and as long as you, like, if you came on, you would have to, in about 5 or 6 years, you would be vice chairman, assuming you got reelected at the board. But
I mean, that's true with the elected boards, right? That's the dynamic that's different between this board.
Right.
Planning board, school board, the select board, they're all voted in.
Right.
The finance committee is more of an appointed board.
Mhm.
They've got
They have a rotation as well.
Yeah, and I think they have a more And obviously the topic of finance committee is extremely important, and there's a lot of people that are very committed to that because their back pocket. So I think there's already an inherent desire for those that get asked to go on. It
Well-
works. We're a little different. I think we've got to find a way to get that kind of momentum moving.
I do think though that, finance committee, having been served in that capacity, I will tell you that the year as chair, really is like nothing else we've experienced in town service. I mean, it's a tremendous amount of work. So really, one has a shelf life of 1 year, and then it's time to rotate off, at least in terms of the officer cycle. Although I've noticed that FinCom in recent years is starting to recycle chairs, which is kind of unusual for them. And then in terms of our situation, I think one of the reasons why we've had multi-year chairs or chairs serving multiple years is that a lot of this is project based. I mean, it's very difficult to change horses in midstream. If you've got a project that is kind of hot and kind of it goes from 1 year to the next and so forth, it's easier, I think, for the committee and for continuity purposes, et cetera, to have the same person as chair kind of seeing through that project to completion. So I see an argument for multiple years service as chair, not necessarily the George or John Connolly model, which was many years, but something kind of more akin to Stuart's model.
I think the other thing, if you look at the project aspect in the next 2-3 years, barring anything that I can't think of, there's not really a major project. It's still the studies, it's still the emergency things, and until the town grapples with the school numbers, and then of course the DPW, which is kind of out there, I suspect the next 2 to 3 years there's not any significant projects. So with that said, do we actually have an opportunity to put people into place? And if they leave the committee, it won't be anything. Anybody leaving the committee is obviously a change, but we would not be hurting a major project per se. Hank?
Yeah, I should point out that we did meet, have the senior study with the MSBA. George was present. We gave them a lot of information. They toured the facility. I think they understood how crowded the facility is, particularly when you take out of the equation the 21-year-old modular classrooms, which they don't count in their assessment. And even though we were one of 23 schools that were visited, there's a possibility that we'll be invited into the eligibility period. The vote will be in December 13th will be the board vote to determine who is invited and who isn't. And we're one of the, there were 9 other schools that were re-invited from the prior year. So there's an outside chance that project would proceed.
But I think if we look at it in all purposes, it proceeds, but it's not starting within 2 years.
Well, there's yes, but there's,
I mean, the design and some other things, yes, but I mean, the real execution, the real sort of, I can't imagine we would get anything started before. I mean, we'd have to get certainly enough of, I mean, you got to go through the vote of the cost. Anyways, I'm not trying to minimize it. I'm just trying to say, Hank, I think that before the next major project really kicks in and where I think we watch this stuff, I think it really is 2 years, but who knows?
yeah, I mean, there's quite a bit of work for our department to put together the whole eligibility period delivery.
Yeah.
An extensive amount of work. We are putting in for another senior project manager. Whether that'll survive the budget process, I don't know. But in anticipation of this proceeding, either this year or next, we want to at least get that into the thinking for the finance committee. If we don't, we will certainly punt to outside sources or resources, which only costs the town more. And the budgetary process, if the theater work progresses, they're actually putting the, that'll be within a year or two to move forward on some of the theater improvements or repairs. And they're rewriting the capital plan as we speak to push Pollard and then Newman forward more quickly and not spread it out over a number of years. So there are
the Newman?
projects that are potentially
Did you
on the
mean-
table.
Did you say Newman?
Yes, the Newman Theater.
Oh, Newman Theater. I'm sorry. I was wondering what's happening at Newman that I wasn't aware of. But anyway, it was the theater you're talking about.
Yeah,
Okay.
and as you may
Just- I
recall,
wanted
we did the safety and compliance repairs this past summer. Those would, like the safety and compliance phase 2 would likely progress next summer, but then they're looking immediately to get into design next year as well for some of that, and projecting forward also for Pollard, because it may be pulled into the eligibility period. So you're right, there are a lot of balls up in the air. Many of these things would be PBBC projects, but the giant elephant in the room is Pollard.
Sure. Okay.
I wanted to just, I didn't want to extend it, but can I make a couple of comments about the meeting?
Yeah, go ahead.
I attended the meeting for the last school project, which was Sunita Williams, with MSBA, similar meeting to what we had the other day. Frankly, I got the same kind of vibes from them. There were a lot of questions that they had. I think we answered all the questions very well, and they felt very good about the answers. They learned a lot about it, and I think before they arranged this meeting, I think they felt Mitchell was the number one choice in their mind. I'm guessing that it's an awful lot more Pollard as the number one choice now. They're seeing what we saw in making that decision. There's also a very, very strong feeling among them, although they have to be careful how they say this, very strong feeling among them about how Needham does its work. They're very pleased with the work we've done. They mentioned Sunita Williams a number of times. Clearly, that's kind of a very nice project that they were extremely pleased with. So I think they feel very comfortable putting Needham on a list because of that. So it would not surprise me as well that we might be on that list in December. I wasn't sure of that before the meeting, but I think I feel much more comfortable that it will be. So the Pollard project could possibly sneak its way forward a little bit. It still is going to take a few years to get ready for it and for us to plan the budget for it. So that's my thought. Sorry about.
Well,
adding
that just, it does create more of there's something brewing for a project, but I think when we look at the vice chair and chair, I feel that the next year or two, we shouldn't have too significant of a full plate. If Pollard really does go, it would be the only big piece versus having, public safety, everything else. You know, it's not like DPW and Pollard are going. So I think we hopefully are in some control of the next couple of years, which maybe gives the committee a chance to you know, reconstitute part of itself in the next generation. But I do agree that you know, I still need to reach out to Kate. I still need to do a few things, and I'd also ask the committee members also to help out. I think we do need to seek some other individuals, because there'll be some turnover in the next year or so. But from a vice chair standpoint, I would just ask that the next meeting, we may not have the meeting in 2 weeks, but the meeting after that, I would ask that we could come back to this topic, and I would really like to see if we can come closer to setting up a vice chair position.
I have one other question on different topics, Stuart, if I could.
Go ahead.
The town meeting this year is the 30th. Usually League of Women Voters expects town meeting members to participate in their meeting. I assume they're going to have a meeting on the 23rd. Is that correct, Catherine?
I don't believe they have one for the special town meeting.
Right.
I think it's just
Oh,
the
they-
annual town meeting.
Is it just annual town meeting, Richard?
I think that's correct. Yes. Although interestingly enough, this year there's some pretty heavy. There's a heavy lift in this year's special town meeting warrant, the stretch code, et cetera. That certainly would if there were a year when they were going to do a media, I should say, warrant meeting, this would be it. But I haven't heard anything about that, and traditionally they do not do one.
Catherine, could you check on that with them? Because I would feel obligated to be there for that. If they are going to have it, it would be on the 23rd.
I can reach out and see, but we might be canceling our meeting on the 23rd at any rate. Is that correct?
Correct.
Stuart?
Yes. I think there's a likelihood, George, that we probably won't have the 23rd.
Okay.
Is it the
Okay.
20? Yeah, okay.
The 23rd would then put us on the 6th of November.
No, the
13th.
13th of November.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I do have a conflict on the 6th. Okay, appreciate that. Okay. I won't push it anymore. I just wanted to get it on the table tonight. I wanted to really start to force us to think about how we're going to do this. It is a collective effort. So with that, I don't know, Richard, if you have any closing comments relative to the topic.
Well, no, I think we've kind of said what we need to say today or tonight. I guess the only thing I would add is just simply please do give it due consideration. Everyone who might be interested, please do think about it. And we do want to have a backbench, but again, I don't think there's really. It sounds like we may not be able to commit beyond what we've talked about tonight, and that's fine. We'll deal with it 1 year at a time as they come. So we'll leave it at that.
All right. Okay, thank you. With that, I believe we've covered the agenda, and unless there's any other
You didn't tell us about your trip.
Oh, my trip. Oh, well, the
How
Bordeaux
was it?
trip. That was
I
fabulous.
assume it was great.
It was fabulous. It was, I went to France for a week with some friends and my wife to celebrate the 60th birthdays. And actually, we got to Paris, and I won't drag on too long, but got to Paris. It was pouring rain. We're like, oh no, we're going to be facing rain. 1 day of rain in Paris, and then we went down to Bordeaux, and it was 75 to 80 degrees all the way through. And saw a lot of history, saw the whole left bank and the right bank, and got a real chance to appreciate that region, not to mention the food and the wine. fabulous. But I would recommend anybody that is interested in wine or even countryside that has a lot of history. It was really intriguing.
When you get out of Paris and go to the south of France or even the north, but I spend a lot of time in the south of France. It's fabulous. The food is incredibly good, and the wine is even better.
Yeah.
Because you often get the wine that doesn't get to Paris. The local wines are some of the best wines around.
And that's a very true statement. It was hard when we started to have some of the wine. I was like, oh, I'd love to get it. Can't get it anywhere.
Yeah.
Only there.
Well, I've been told many times by the people I've worked with over there that they save the best wines from the vineyards for the people that are local, for the families that run it, and for the people that are local. It's interesting.
True. But centuries, hundreds of years. I mean, the English helped establish Bordeaux.
Yeah.
But
Well, I didn't want to turn this into a travelogue, but I did want to find out if you had a great time, and you deserve
absolutely.
it.
We can touch base outside of this meeting, George. But it was fun, and again, I would recommend
That's
to
good.
anybody. Very enjoyable. It was a river cruise, so it was only about 90 people on a small boat versus one of these big monster boats, and it was very well set up, very well done. Okay, all right.
Great.
With that,
Thanks for sharing.
I'll close it on a positive topic.
Thank you.
Have a good week, everybody.
Thanks,
too.
everybody.
And
Night.